She smashed my front door at 6 a.m. over a paint color, not knowing my wife is a police chief. What followed was a war of power, lies, and one HOA tyrant's explosive downfall. And trust me, you'll want to see how it ends. The morning began with violence. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't thunder. It was the kind of sound that makes your stomach turn before your mind can catch up. A shattering crash exploded through the silence of my home, like a bomb had gone off. 1 second I was asleep. The next I was upright, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. Every nerve in my body snapped awake. I stumbled out of bed, half blind, nearly tripping over the pair of sneakers I'd left lazily kicked to the side the night before. I checked the clock. 6:12 a.m. Too early for a visit. Too late for a dream. The house was quiet except for the lingering echo of what sounded like breaking glass. I froze. Every childhood nightmare, every home invasion story, every true crime podcast flashed in my head like a montage. Was someone inside? Was it a burglar? Adrenaline pulsed through me as I lunged toward the door. My bare feet slapped hard against the wooden floorboards as I tore through the hallway, each step echoing louder in the empty stillness. Then came another smash. Glass. Again, this one from the front of the house. My pulse tripled. When I reached the front hallway, I skidded to a halt, chest heaving. My eyes dropped to the floor first. Glass. Shards of it, glinting like diamonds in the amber rays of early sunlight pouring in from what used to be the glass insert on our front door. It was now a jagged, gaping hole. Bits of shattered safety glass glittered like confetti from a celebration gone terribly wrong. And there she was, Vanessa Sharpe. She stood on the other side of the doorway, framed like some twisted portrait, blonde hair perfectly set, sharp navy blazer, and pinned proudly to her lapel, like a sheriff's star in a lawless town, a glinting HOA badge. If hell had a queen, she would wear that expression, self-righteous fury layered with smug authority. Vanessa Sharpe, our homeowner association compliance officer, or as most of us called her in whispered tones, the HOA Karen, a woman known to email violations over unmowed lawns, or leave passive-aggressive flyers about mismatched trash cans. But this was new. Vanessa? I croaked, still not believing my own eyes. What the actual hell are you doing? She didn't flinch. Instead, she waved a manila folder stuffed with papers, some fluttering free in the wind like war banners. You're in gross violation of Article 13 of the Community Aesthetic Standards, she said sharply, her eyes gleaming. I've rung this bell 12 times this week. Left 3 notices. You didn't respond. My mouth opened, but no words came. My door, my actual door, it was destroyed. Over what paint? Mismatched columns, she snapped, gesturing toward the front porch with disdain. They're white. The community standard is beige. You were warned. I blinked at her. Once. Twice. Then I looked past her at the porch. The columns, freshly painted crisp white, stood proudly like soldiers guarding the entrance to our modest brick home. Are you seriously telling me, I said slowly, that you smashed my front door over paint color? Vanessa sneered. This isn't about color. This is about compliance, about uniformity. Your renovations pose a structural risk and violate our covenant bylaws. I stared at her. No words, just rage rising like a fire. Vanessa took a bold step forward, into the destroyed doorway, her foot crunching the shards beneath her expensive flats like she owned the place. The HOA empowers me to conduct safety inspections if violations are suspected. You refused entry. You never asked for entry. I shouted. I left notices. You ignored them. I took necessary measures. Necessary measures? My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. You committed vandalism. I said, stepping between her and the threshold. This is private property. You broke and entered. She smirked. Oh, please. It's not breaking and entering if the door was unlocked. I was asleep. She raised a brow, as if to say, and whose fault is that? I could feel my hands curling into fists. I needed backup. I needed logic. I needed someone with the power to shove this nonsense back into the hole it had crawled out of. I needed Naomi. She didn't expect. Naomi, my wife, my partner, my rock, and conveniently, also the chief of police for our district. I turned and strode to the side table by the couch, glass crunching beneath my slippers as Vanessa continued barking about code violations and safety hazards. I grabbed my phone, swiped fast, and hit Naomi's direct line. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, babe, I'm about to walk into briefing. Everything okay?" "Not really," I whispered, voice shaking. "Vanessa, from the HOA. She just smashed our front door." A sharp inhale. "She's right here," I added, ranting about porch colors and HOA rules. "She's calling it a safety inspection." Naomi's voice dropped an octave. "Steady. Cold. She destroyed our door?" "Yes." "She's still there?" "Yes." "Good. Don't let her leave. I'm on my way. I'll send a patrol unit too. Get her license plate if she tries to bolt." I hung up. When I turned around, Vanessa was still standing there, smugly photographing our porch. "You better not overreact," she said without turning. "This is an internal HOA matter. You'll just embarrass yourself." I couldn't even find words. My hand trembled as I slipped the phone back into my pocket. She thought she was untouchable. She really thought her little badge gave her the power to override the law. She had no idea what was about to hit her. The next 5 minutes were excruciating. I tried to sweep up some of the glass, partly to do something with my hands, partly to stop my brain from spiraling. Vanessa wandered the porch like she was performing an official audit, muttering to herself, pointing at things with her pen. I could barely hear her over the sound of my own blood boiling. Then sirens, low, distant at first, then rapidly approaching. Vanessa's head snapped up. The smugness evaporated. A blue and white squad car pulled up first, lights flashing. Behind it, a black SUV with tinted windows rolled into the driveway. The cruiser stopped. 2 uniformed officers stepped out. Then the SUV's door opened. Naomi. She stepped out with calm purpose, her dark slacks pressed, her badge gleaming against her belt. She looked like justice incarnate. "My wife," the police chief. Vanessa's mouth parted. Her face went pale. Naomi's voice cut like a knife. "You okay?" she asked, eyes on me, ignoring Vanessa entirely. "I'm fine," I said, stepping aside, but the doors totaled. Naomi walked past me, eyes scanning the damage. Her jaw tightened. She turned to the officers. "She did this?" One nodded, witnessed it ourselves. Vanessa stepped back. "Wait, what's going on? Who are you?" Naomi turned slowly. "Chief Naomi Herrera. That's my husband. You just committed a crime on my property." And for the first time, Vanessa Sharp looked scared. Vanessa Sharp, the self-proclaimed queen of compliance, stood frozen in my doorway like a criminal caught mid-crime. Only now did she realize she wasn't dealing with a mild-mannered husband in flannel pajamas. She was facing the police chief's bows, and Naomi had just stepped into the ring. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She turned toward the officer beside her and spoke in a calm, practiced tone that chilled more than any yelling could have. "Document everything. I want full photos of the entry, broken glass, footprints, all of it. Interview my husband first." The officer gave a sharp nod and approached me with a notepad already in hand. Vanessa finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "It was just an inspection. I had no choice." He was non-compliant. The porch was out of regulation. That column color, Naomi cut in, "doesn't give you the right to destroy private property." Her tone was low, unshakable. "You're not a code enforcement officer. You don't have legal authority to enter someone's home, let alone smash your way in." Vanessa's face twisted into something between disbelief and disdain. "The HOA has standards. This neighborhood depends on uniformity and safety. I have every right." Naomi stepped forward, her voice tightening. "The only rights you had ended at the property line, and now you're facing vandalism and trespassing charges. The board doesn't override criminal law." You can't be serious. Vanessa barked. The officer beside Naomi flipped his notepad closed. We are. You're under arrest. The click of handcuffs snapped louder than the shattering glass had that morning. As Vanessa was led toward the cruiser, she turned back over her shoulder, eyes burning into me. You'll regret this, she growled. You think this is over? The HOA stands with me. You'll be buried in fines, so deep you'll choke. I'll see to it myself. I didn't flinch. Naomi stood beside me, arms folded, eyes locked with Vanessa's. Threats will only add to your rap sheet, she said coldly. Vanessa scowled but said no more. The cruiser door shut with a definitive clunk, and the car pulled away, carrying the monster off to the cage she never thought she'd see. The moment the tires rolled off the driveway, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. But I wasn't relieved. Not yet, because Vanessa's words lingered in the air like the smell of burnt plastic. You'll regret this. I didn't even have time to finish sweeping up the glass when the first knock came. It was hesitant, almost shy. Through the jagged cardboard we'd hastily taped over the hole in the door, I could just make out the silhouettes. 2 people, standing awkwardly on the porch. I opened what was left of the door. It was Jill and Darren, our neighbors from 3 houses down. Jill clutched a coffee mug in both hands like a shield. Darren, tall and broad-shouldered, looked like someone had just asked him to dig a grave. She really did that? Jill asked, her eyes wide at the mess. Yep. I nodded, smashed it clean. Darren exhaled. I saw the cruiser, but I didn't know it was her. It was, I said. She said our porch columns were too white. Jill nearly dropped her mug. Too white? She echoed, incredulous. She threatened to fine us $500 a day because our new fence posts were 2 inches too tall. Darren nodded grimly. We had to call my brother, he's a contractor, just to cut them down. My pulse quickened. So it's not just us. Jill looked at me seriously. No, it's not. She's been harassing people for months. Years, maybe. But no one's ever stood up to her. Well, I said, glancing at the wreckage behind me, maybe it's time they do. The rest of that morning passed in a daze. I swept up the last of the glass, patched the door the best I could, and began sorting through old paperwork. Buried in a kitchen drawer, under expired coupons and tangled charger cords, I found a half-completed form Naomi and I had started months ago, an application for design approval from the HOA board. It listed the exact column color we'd used. Crisp white number 2201. We'd never submitted it. Life got busy. We forgot. That tiny oversight had now escalated into a criminal act. By the time Naomi came back from the station, still in uniform but minus the badge, my laptop was open, and I was halfway through compiling every HOA email, every violation letter, every photo of our porch, before and after images, timestamps, neighbor texts. I was creating a war chest. Naomi glanced at the organized chaos. Good. Paper trails win cases. I raised a brow. We're going to press charges? We're going to do more than that, she said. We're going to expose her. Gathers momentum. Naomi reached out to one of her legal contacts, a civil attorney named Brandon who specialized in HOA disputes. After reviewing the evidence, he didn't mince words. This woman's dangerous, he said. You got grounds for damages, possibly enough to push for removal from the HOA board. That night, while Naomi handled internal protocols at the station to avoid conflict of interest, I stayed up compiling a new file, testimonies. I sent a message to our neighborhood group chat. I kept it short, factual, and polite. Some of you may have heard what happened this morning with HOA President Vanessa Sharp. If you or someone you know has experienced inappropriate behavior, harassment, or unjust fines under her authority, I'd be grateful if you'd be willing to share. Confidentiality respected. Within 30 minutes, my inbox lit up like a Christmas tree. One message read, she threatened to have our dog taken by animal control because he barked once at 10 a.m. Another, she went through our recycling bin and said a wine bottle violated community sobriety image standards. Is that even a real thing? And another, she fined my husband for leaving his wheelchair ramp extended past sunset. We were told it clashed with neighborhood visual cohesion. By the time I collapsed into bed, I had nearly 24 accounts, each more absurd and terrifying than the last. Vanessa hadn't been enforcing rules. She'd been weaponizing them. Closing scene, a darkness that lingers. The house was quiet again that night. Naomi insisted on parking her cruiser in the driveway, red and blue lights deactivated but visible, a silent warning. As I stood at the cardboard-covered door, staring out into the dark street, I realized just how deep the roots of Vanessa's power had grown. She didn't operate alone. The board let her run wild, and now that she'd been challenged, she would be desperate to claw back her throne. My phone buzzed. It was Naomi. Just got word. She's out on bail. I stared out at the street. No movement, no sound, but I knew she was out there, plotting, waiting. Naomi's message had been clear. She's out on bail. The night was quiet, but it was a quiet that hummed with unease. I stood by the patched door, cardboard panel fluttering slightly with the breeze, staring into the darkness of our neighborhood street. Nothing moved. No headlights. No footsteps. Just a faint buzz of a distant street lamp and the occasional chirp of insects. But she was out there. And Vanessa Sharp wasn't the type to back down. She wasn't retreating. She was reloading. The next morning, the sun rose with deceptive warmth. Everything looked normal. Children walking to the bus stop, a jogger with earbuds bouncing to a silent beat, sprinklers hissing across manicured lawns. But my gut knew better. When I opened the front door, cardboard panel creaking slightly, a black envelope fluttered off the windshield of my car like a cursed love letter. My name was scrawled in angry red ink, block letters, all uppercase. Inside was a formal-looking document on HOA letterhead, 72 hours. Remove unauthorized columns immediately or face escalating fines and legal action. This time we won't be so polite. My jaw tightened. I took a photo of the letter and immediately forwarded it to Naomi. Her reply came quickly. Ridiculous. Don't respond. Keep documenting everything. But it wasn't just the words in the letter. It was the implication. She'd been here. Vanessa, overnight, alone and unafraid, slipping hate mail onto our car like she was still in control. The protective order hadn't been granted yet. It was in motion, yes, but not in place. And she knew that. She was skating the edge of legality, smiling at the cracks. That afternoon, while I was sweeping debris from our porch, more out of restlessness than necessity, I noticed it. A black sedan, crawling down the road like a stalking predator. Tinted windows. Too slow to be casual. Too deliberate to be lost. My hands froze on the broom. As it neared the house, I stepped back into the shadows of the entry. I watched the car approach, slow even further, then coast past the driveway with eerie grace. Behind the wheel, Vanessa. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She just stared, cold, calculated, like she was memorizing the layout of my house. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture just as the car turned the corner and disappeared. Naomi called back immediately after I sent it. She's bold, Naomi said. Too bold. She doesn't care, I replied. She thinks she's invincible. She's about to learn otherwise. It happened 2 nights later. 2:13 a.m. The security camera we'd installed days earlier lit up my phone with a motion alert. Groggy but wired from constant anxiety. I sat up in bed and opened the feed. A figure in a hoodie was creeping onto the porch. They paused near the columns, pulled something from a tote bag, and bent low. The motion light flashed on, and the figure jerked upright. In that instant, the grainy feed caught a profile. It wasn't perfect, but the height, the body posture, it screamed Vanessa. She bolted, leaving behind her bag in a panic. Naomi was already halfway into her pants by the time I burst into the bedroom. We called it in. A unit swept through in 10 minutes, but she was long gone. However, her bag wasn't. Inside, a bottle of chemical paint remover, zip ties, a cloth rag, a printed diagram of our house. She had planned it, carefully, calculated every move. This wasn't a protest. It was a targeted act of sabotage. Naomi filed an official report, and by the following afternoon, we were standing in front of a judge. The protective order was granted. Vanessa Sharp was now legally barred from coming within 200 yards of our home. But even as the paperwork slid across the judge's bench, I knew this wouldn't stop her. By now, word of the door smashing, the threats, the arrest, and the drive-by had rippled through our suburban streets like wildfire. Jill and Darren returned the next day, holding a clipboard filled with handwritten testimonies from other neighbors. One by one, people were beginning to speak out. She tried to fine us for hanging laundry on a Sunday, one woman wrote. She demanded we remove our son's basketball hoop because it was too expressive, said another. She threatened to evict us over a garden gnome, added an elderly couple who looked like they hadn't slept since 1973. Each story fueled a fire, and each one made Vanessa's authority crack and splinter like the glass in our front door. Naomi coordinated quietly with residents who felt intimidated but were now ready to step forward. She avoided any official police involvement in their statements, choosing instead to support as a neighbor, not a chief. It was important the fight came from within the community, from the people Vanessa had stepped on for years. The HOA board met once a month. Normally, these meetings were half-baked affairs with lukewarm coffee, a folding table, and maybe 6 sleepy attendees nodding through landscaping budgets. But the next one, we were going to flood the room. Jill and Darren helped spearhead the coordination. Flyers went up. Word spread through Facebook groups and side chats. By the time the meeting date loomed, we had over 40 neighbors planning to attend, and most had written statements ready to present. We weren't staging a rebellion. We were organizing a reckoning. We studied the bylaws, learned the loopholes, found that under Section 6B, a compliance officer could be suspended by majority board vote pending a formal investigation. Vanessa wouldn't go quietly, but we didn't need her to. We just needed to bring the light. Closing scene, the calm before the confrontation. On the night before the HOA meeting, Naomi and I sat on the porch. The columns, still painted crisp white, gleamed under the porch light. Our new security system pulsed quietly at the edges. She looked over at me, sipping from a chipped mug. "You ready for tomorrow?" I nodded. "I've got 24 witness statements, photos, HOA violation letters, the paint remover, the footage, and a room full of pissed-off neighbors." Naomi smiled. "Good, because once this breaks, there's no going back." And deep down, I hope she was right, because behind the picket fences and polite waves, a storm had been brewing for far too long. And tomorrow, the lightning would strike. The air buzzed with anticipation. We sat quietly on the porch, Naomi and I, letting the tension of the coming battle settle over us like the creeping dusk. The wind was still. The columns gleamed defiantly in the porch light, white, proud, and unwelcome in Vanessa's rigid world. Tomorrow wasn't just a meeting. It was a reckoning. The morning of the HOA meeting started unusually early, not because of alarms or noise, but because I simply couldn't sleep. My mind ticked like a metronome. Documents, photos, statements, bylaws, testimonies. Each piece had to align perfectly. Vanessa wasn't just powerful, she was cunning. By 7 a.m., I was pacing with a mug of coffee and rereading the HOA charter, highlighting key clauses like my life depended on it. Naomi, dressed down in jeans and a hoodie to blend in, sat at the table beside me, sorting through the final versions of statements collected from our neighbors. "Remember," she said calmly, "don't let her bait you. She'll try to provoke, deflect, dominate the room. Let the evidence speak." "I've got this," I replied, but my pulse betrayed me. Around noon, Jill dropped by with a final list of confirmed attendees. Over 40 residents. More than 3 times the usual turnout. She smirked when she saw my raised eyebrows. "This town's ready for revolution," she said. And for the first time since Vanessa smashed our door, I believed it. By 6:45 p.m., the lot outside the community center was overflowing. Minivans, sedans, hybrid SUVs lined up like soldiers. Some parked illegally on curbs. Others doubled up in driveways. It felt like a rally, not a meeting. Inside the community hall, the folding chairs filled fast. The board's long plastic table sat awkwardly on the raised platform at the front, flanked by pitchers of water and neatly stacked agendas. The murmur of the crowd wasn't angry. It was electric. Darren leaned over to me. I haven't seen this many people in here since the power outage vote in 17. I half smiled, but I wasn't relaxed. I scanned the room, searching for her. And right at 7:02, the back doors opened. Vanessa Sharp strode in like she owned the building. Blazer pressed, clipboard in hand, chin raised high. The crowd quieted instantly. Some whispered, others glared. But Vanessa didn't flinch. She walked to her seat at the board center, placed her clipboard down like a sword being unsheathed, and scanned the audience, pausing just long enough when her eyes met mine to let a smug smile twitch at her lips. She still thought she was untouchable. Arthur, the board president, tapped the mic nervously. Well, call this meeting to order, he stammered. His eyes scanned the packed room. Please be respectful. We have an unusual turnout tonight. He glanced at the empty agenda. It was clear the meeting had one purpose only. Then a hand shot up from the front row. Jill. Mr. Chairman, she said, rising to her feet. With all due respect, we'd like to dispense with formalities and address the criminal actions of Compliance Chair Vanessa Sharp. Applause. Arthur blinked. Well, yes, that item is under new business. Darren stood up beside her. We demand her immediate suspension. We've had enough. The board needs to explain how this was allowed to go on this long. Another wave of cheers and whistles surged through the room. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. Arthur tried to calm the room. Please, order. Let's let Mrs. Sharp speak. Vanessa stood with slow, theatrical precision. I was performing a mandatory inspection, she said, voice steady. Repeated notices were ignored. I acted to preserve the safety and integrity of our community. That's what you entrusted me to do. You smashed a man's door, someone shouted from back. I acted within my authority, she snapped. You acted like a dictator. Darren shot back. You're out of control. Arthur's face was pale. The board looked visibly shaken. This wasn't discussion anymore. It was a rebellion. I stood slowly. The room went quiet. My name is Jordan Herrera, I said, clearly. Many of you know me. I live on Woodcliff Drive, third house on the left. Vanessa shattered my front door at 6:12 a.m. because our columns were white instead of beige. A few chuckles, but mostly outrage. She entered my property, uninvited. She vandalized our home. She was arrested. That's not a dispute. That's a crime. I held up a manila folder. This contains over 20 statements from residents who've been threatened, bullied, fined, and harassed. Some of you are in here. Others were too afraid to speak. I set the folder on the table. Naomi, seated in the back, watched silently, proud, stone-faced. Vanessa's mask cracked. This is a setup. He's the police chief's husband. Of course he's getting special treatment. Boos echoed through the room. I never once invoked Naomi's title. I said firmly, and she recused herself from all involvement. The only thing I relied on are facts. Jill stood up again. This community's had enough. She fined us for garden fences, threatened legal action over birthday decorations. She once cited a woman for having her trash bins visible for 15 minutes. Another voice rang out. She tried to evict my father for keeping a ramp. Vanessa's eyes flickered. For a second, just one, I saw something new in her face. Panic. Arthur cleared his throat and turned to the other board members, all 5 of them now sweating under the fluorescent lights. We have the authority, he said quietly, to vote for temporary suspension of a board member under Section 6B. He looked at Vanessa. Until the criminal investigation is resolved, and until this board can fully review the complaints, I move to vote on Mrs. Sharp's suspension. I second, muttered one board member. All in favor? Arthur asked, barely audible, for hands went up. Vanessa stayed down. The room erupted. People clapped, shouted, hugged. Darren actually stood on a chair and yelled, "About time!" Vanessa stood, her face pale and stiff. This isn't over. You think you won something? I built this HOA. I ran this place. You're nothing without me. Then her eyes locked on me. You'll regret humiliating me. And with that, she snatched her clipboard, stormed past the crowd, and shoved open the double doors so hard one of them bounced back into the frame. The room fell into stunned silence. Arthur adjusted his glasses and said, "Meeting adjourned." Closing scene, the first taste of victory. Afterward, neighbors surrounded us like we were local celebrities. Naomi stayed back, smiling quietly, refusing credit. She let the community own their moment. Jill squeezed my arm. "That was incredible." Darren offered a fist bump. "You stood up to Tyrant." I smiled, but the victory tasted bittersweet. Vanessa had left in fury, not defeat. And someone like her didn't retreat into the shadows without a plan. As we walked back toward our house under the yellow-orange glow of the street lamps, Naomi glanced over at me. "She's not done." "I know," I replied, "but we're not afraid of her anymore." "She's not done," Naomi said quietly as we walked beneath the sodium glow street lamps. I nodded. I knew it in my bones. Vanessa Sharp wasn't defeated. She was wounded. And wounded predators? They bite harder. The next morning began with a different kind of silence, the kind you feel before a storm. It wasn't peaceful. It was oppressive, tense. No one mentioned Vanessa, but her name floated in the air like smog. The board had voted. She was suspended. Her power cut on paper. But this was the real world, where power doesn't vanish with a vote. It claws, lingers, finds backdoors and allies in shadows. I poured coffee, flipped open my laptop, and scanned my emails. And there it was, a new violation notice. Sent not from Vanessa directly, but from the HOA's official address. Anonymous. No name. No signature. Subject. Ongoing violation. Immediate attention required. Your porch columns remain out of compliance. Despite current community tensions, we expect you to uphold regulations. Please address within 48 hours to avoid renewed legal steps. My chest tightened. She was using the system, even while under suspension, weaponizing loopholes. She's behind this. I said aloud. Naomi glanced up from her phone, frowning. It's not signed, probably forwarded through another board member she still controls. I scanned the footer. Frederick Mays, interim compliance chair. His name was there. But something fell off. I picked up my phone. Reveal themselves. Frederick answered on the third ring. His voice was soft, like an exhausted professor. "Jordan, I was expecting your call. Did you send this?" I asked, forwarding him the violation email. He sighed. "No, I didn't. That email template. Vanessa had access to it for years. It was automated through a cloud system she controlled. I'm still trying to wrestle the credentials from her. So she's still firing off official notices from the inside? She set up backups, time messages. She's probably triggering them from home. Even while suspended? She never expected to lose control, Frederick said quietly. This isn't about community guidelines anymore. It's a vendetta. I leaned back while rising. She's using the HOA like a remote control missile. She's got allies, he admitted. A few board members are still loyal. Scared, mostly. She helped them win elections. Controlled the voting blocks. People owe her. I paused. How long before we can shut her down for good? Frederick exhaled. Depends how far she goes. That answer came faster than anyone anticipated. 3 days later, a letter arrived via certified mail. Thick, formal, legal grade stationery. Vanessa Sharp versus the HOA board, Jordan Herrera, Naomi Herrera, and others. She was suing all of us. Claimed wrongful suspension, character defamation, abuse of power. Even claimed Naomi had orchestrated a witch hunt, using her influence as police chief to fabricate the door incident. I stared at the letter. The text blurred. This is insane, I muttered. Naomi scanned it calmly, then flipped to the last page. She hired Mason Gregg. My brow lifted. Who? A high-profile HOA attorney. Expensive, aggressive, known for representing abusive boards trying to crush dissenters. She's trying to bury us in litigation. Naomi nodded. That's her new game. If she can't control the neighborhood, she'll destroy from the courtroom. We called Brandon, our civil attorney. He didn't flinch. Let her sue, he said. She's going to lose. You've got footage, timestamps, neighbor testimonies, and a criminal record in progress. But it'll get messy and expensive. How messy? Brace for depositions, public hearings, maybe even news coverage. Naomi leaned over and whispered, "Let her bring the cameras." It didn't take long. 2 days later, a local news van parked at the edge of the neighborhood. A young reporter knocked on our patched-up door. Behind her, a cameraman adjusted his rig. They weren't pushy, but they were curious. We received multiple community tips about a series of HOA complaints, a vandalism case, and a suspended officer now filing a lawsuit against her own board. She said, "Would you like to comment?" Naomi was home. She looked at me, gave the smallest nod. We stepped outside together. For 5 minutes, I told our story, not with drama, not with exaggeration, just the facts. She broke our door. I said, "She's used the HOA like a weapon, but the community stood together, and we're not afraid of her anymore." Naomi stayed silent. Her presence was enough. That night, the segment aired on local TV. The story caught fire. And Vanessa, she went silent. For 3 days, no emails, no threats, no anonymous notices. The eye of the storm. But predators don't go quiet unless they're hunting. It happened on the 4th night. At 2:48 a.m., our security system lit up again. Not motion this time. Noise. A loud clatter, like something hitting our house. Naomi and I both leapt from bed. She grabbed her off-duty firearm. I hit the security feed. Nothing. Then a shadow. Running. Gone. We waited until daylight to inspect the damage. On our front lawn, painted in red spray paint, were 3 words. "Get out, freaks." On the porch, broken eggs. Crude. Petty. Juvenile. But beneath that, something darker, the feeling of being watched, of being stalked. Naomi filed an official police report, her first formal involvement. "This just crossed into hate crime territory," she said. "And harassment," I added. But even as we filed the report, I knew something had changed. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. It was personal. That night, Naomi pulled out the stack of neighbor testimonies. "Let's organize it. Make copies. Build an archive. If this goes to court, we go in louder than we came out." I nodded. She wanted war? I said. Naomi looked me in the eye. "Then let's win it." Outside, the breeze had shifted. The white porch column stood firm, scarred, but not broken. Naomi leaned over the table, sliding one last statement into a manila folder thick with evidence. She wanted war, I'd said. She didn't even blink. "Then let's win it." The board meeting had ended in public humiliation. The lawsuit was her response. And now, as the court date loomed, we prepared for a fight we never wanted, but one we couldn't walk away from, because Vanessa Sharp had crossed the line from control freak to full-blown tyrant, and now she was standing trial. The morning of the trial was overcast, gray and heavy like the air was holding its breath. When Naomi and I arrived at the courthouse, I expected an empty hallway, maybe a bailiff and a few legal assistants. What I didn't expect was a crowd. Jill was there, arms crossed, flipping through a magazine like it was jury duty. Darren sat nearby, dressed in business casual with scowl aimed at the courtroom door. And beyond them, dozens of our neighbors. Quiet, watching, waiting. A symbol, a show of unity. We weren't alone. Inside the courtroom, things were less civil. Vanessa arrived late. Her navy blue pantsuit looked like it had been ironed with anger. Her hair was pulled back, so tight it looked painful. She scanned the gallery and visibly winced at the number of familiar faces glaring back. Beside her stood Mason Gregg, her high-priced attorney with the oily charm of a reality TV villain. He barely looked at us as he unpacked his briefcase. His confidence was palpable and misplaced, because no matter how expensive his words were, they couldn't erase the evidence. The trial opened with calm formality, but tension buzzed beneath every sentence. The prosecutor laid out the foundation. Vanessa Sharp, suspended HOA compliance officer, had unlawfully entered private property, destroyed a front door, issued retaliatory threats, and violated a protective order with continued harassment. Each point was backed with visuals. A printed photo of our smashed front door, surveillance footage of the early morning trespassing attempt, the vandalized lawn, the chemical paint remover, and, finally, the red spray-painted threat. Get out, freaks. Vanessa's lawyer countered with spin. She was fulfilling her duty, he said smoothly. She issued multiple notices. Her client was trying to preserve the standards of a tightly governed community. She was forced into defensive action by escalating hostility from homeowners. Then he said the line that made Naomi's knuckles go white. This entire matter has been politically weaponized. Her neighbor is the police chief. This was a coordinated takedown. He tried to portray Vanessa as a martyr, a woman abused by a biased system, betrayed by a community too soft to accept the necessity of order. It might have worked, if not for what came next. The judge allowed brief witness statements. And our side? We didn't bring one or two. We brought 12. Jill went first, calm, clear, and relentless. She fined me for painting my door eggshell white instead of sandstone beige, she said. When I refused to pay, she threatened to revoke my landscaping privileges. Darren followed. She measured my fence height with a level, said it was too assertive. Then came Ms. Long from across the street. She left notes on my window saying my child's tricycle violated visual harmony. Then an elderly man. She gave me a written warning for hanging a flag too close to July 3rd. Each one chipped away at the narrative Vanessa had tried to build. Each voice revealed what we already knew. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. When my turn came, I stood without a script. I didn't know who Vanessa really was until the day I woke up to the sound of my front door shattering. At 6:12 a.m., she didn't knock. She didn't call. She smashed the glass. Because our columns were the wrong color. That's not community enforcement. That's obsession. I paused. And when she realized my wife was a police chief, she didn't back down. She doubled down. Because tyrants don't quit when they're challenged. They retaliate. But this time we didn't bend. The room was silent. Even Vanessa. The judge returned after a short recess. His face was unreadable as he opened the file. In the matter of Vanessa Sharp, the court finds the defendant guilty on all counts: vandalism, criminal trespass, harassment, and violation of protective order. The room exhaled as one. Vanessa's expression remained unchanged for a second. Then her jaw clenched, her lips thinned, and her mask finally cracked. Sentencing will include 6 months of probation, mandatory community service, and a civil fine matching the cost of damages. In addition, the defendant is barred from serving in any HOA leadership or enforcement position during her probation. The protective order remains in effect. The gavel struck once. Final. Resounding. Vanessa didn't shout. Didn't storm out. She just crumbled. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. She looked at us. Not with fury, not with power, but with something she had never shown before. Fear, because her reign was finally over. Weeks passed. Frederick remained interim compliance chair, working with the board to revise archaic HOA policies. Fines were reassessed. Meetings became public forums. Fear gave way to transparency. Vanessa? She moved out, not in the dead of night, as some expected, but with visible bitterness. She was seen loading a moving van with clinical precision, her face stoic as neighbors passed without waving. Her name became a cautionary tale, a lesson in how unchecked authority can rot from the inside out. Naomi and I rebuilt our door. We kept the columns white. Every time I walked past them, I smiled. Not because we want to fight over paint, but because we stood up to someone who thought she could intimidate a neighborhood into submission. We hosted a porch gathering that fall. Kids played tag. Jill brought wine. Darren grilled. Naomi sat beside me, watching it all. You think peace lasts this time? I asked. She sipped her tea. Not always. But when you defend it together, it's worth the fight. I looked at the door, new, unbroken. It was more than a door now. It was a reminder that even in the quietest communities, tyrants can rise. And when they do, you meet them with truth, unity, and fire.